Good morning.
Morning. We have 3 members present, and I believe Susan is going to be coming a little bit late. So she will join us, but why don't we go ahead and get started? Yes, so welcome to Government Operations Committee, December 7th. We do have a few changes to the agenda. We have 3 resolutions that we need to add. They're on your desks. That's returned village taxes, returned school taxes, and adoption of apportionment of taxes for 2024. So we will go ahead and add those. Also, Bridget and Lisa need to step out for strategic planning, so I do want to move their report and the 2 policies up. So we're going to do that first, so you're going to have to wait, Jay. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, and we do have some members of the public present. Welcome. I'm just going to read the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. So thank you for being here. First, we have Sally Dorick.
Hi. Thank you for the job that you do. I know it's usually thankless, so we appreciate you. My name is Sally Dorick. I live in Broome County in the town of Dickinson, and I am a volunteer with New York Citizens Audit. And New York Citizens Audit volunteer did a presentation here a few months ago, and we'd like to read the resolution into the minutes. Resolution for an audit of the New York State 2022 general election. Whereas it is recognized civil rights in the United States for every citizen to have free and fair elections, and the right of suffrage can be denied by debasement or dilution of the weight of a citizen's vote just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. Whereas it is affirmative duty of our election officials to comply with all federal and state laws governing administration and procedure of our elections, thereby guaranteeing our elections are accurate and free of distortion and manipulation. Whereas our constitutional system of representative government only works when the worth of honest ballots is not diluted by invalid ballots procured by corruption, and assuring accuracy can only be achieved through the operational integrity of our elections, as defined by those laws governing the following 5 processes. 1, rigorous verification of voter identity. 2, proven ballot security and intact chain of custody. 3, voting system certified to be secure from operational, physical, and cyber threats. 4, meets all FSMA and state operational and risk assessment requirements. 5, meets auditability and traceability requirements and operational policy. Whereas an open source audit of the New York State 2020 general election conducted by New York Citizens Audit has uncovered evidence of massive inaccuracies that violate both federal and state laws, including 2,427,827 New York State voter ID numbers attached to 1,170,790 registrants. 740,396 ineligible votes were cast statewide. 338,356 more votes were cast than voters who voted. 987,490 voters who registered on January 1st from 1900 to 2021. 1.9 million registrations in the state voter rolls missing from the county rolls. 625,359 more registrations than voting age citizens in 6 counties alone. 195,271 votes cast in New York City that went missing by the New York State voter database. 1 million plus felony violations of the New York State election law. 95 state and federal legislative races impacted by 740,396 ineligible votes. Abandoned ballots and ballot payment schemes. Certification was defined by law, was provably fraudulent and illegal. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Elizabeth Miller.
Hi. I'm a volunteer with New York Citizens Audit, and I live in Ithaca, New York. Whereas these findings trample accuracy requirements of voting systems for a federal election, wherein the system shall achieve a target error rate of no more than 1 in 10 million ballot positions. For a voting system, accuracy is defined as the ability of the system to capture, record, store, consolidate, and report the specific selections and absence of selections made by the voter for each ballot position without error. It must be known factually, whereas it must be known factually and provably that the intent of the voters is accurately represented by election results before certification can be lawfully conducted. Certification of an election that varies from the law is an abridgment of the civil rights of the citizens, a fraud ab initio, United States versus Throgmorton, 98 U.S. 61 in 1878. Whereas state and federal officials have met the efforts of New York Citizens Audit to seek redress for these egregious violations with indifference and inaction, including the Attorney General, Secretary of State, State Board of Elections, Inspector General, Federal Bureau of Investigations, state leadership of Democrat and Republican parties, county election officials, sheriffs, district attorneys, and others. Whereas none of these violations were addressed prior to the administration and certification of the 2022 general election, and there prevails a spirit of extreme contention and zero trust between people of differing political ideologies across New York, which is destructive to our families, our way of life, and the fabric of these United States.
Thank you. Next, Kelly Boutoil.
Boutoil, very good. Thank you. I am from the town of Groton, and I really appreciate being here this morning. I'm a volunteer with New York Citizens Audit. Therefore, we call upon our representatives, including town board members, county legislators, state legislators, federal legislators, law enforcement, federal and state prosecutors, and judges to provide relief to the people and the assurance of domestic tranquility through the fulfillment of each of the following firm requests. 1, a complete end-to-end audit of the New York State 2022 general election for both paper and electronic records, including ballots, by a mutually agreed upon external third-party bonded auditing firm, possessed of adequate insurance and indemnification for the handling and protection of the personal information, identifying information of millions of New York citizens in order to determine the true error rate. This audit will provide a comprehensive report, an analysis of all lapses and errors with explanation of cause where it can be determined. 2, the enactment of legislation defining a mutually agreed upon process by which an end-to-end audit would be triggered in any future elections. 3, the enactment of legislation defining a mutually agreed upon accuracy rate for the New York State voter and county voter roll databases. 4, the enactment of legislation allowing for anonymous vote verification and tracking by the voter, open source, royalty-free, patent pending, including automatic mechanisms to report and remedy errors during the canvass period following an election, regardless of ballot entry source. 5, criminalize election misconduct explicitly with regard to state election law and increase penalties to reflect the societal and generational harms inflicted by these crimes. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Dave, sorry, I can't read your last name.
It's Williams, Dave
Williams, okay, thank you.
I live in the town, but not the city of Ithaca. I'm a volunteer with New York Citizens Audit. Be it resolved that Tompkins County, New York, stands in support with the concerns and remedies presented here. We implore the Tompkins County Legislature, New York State Legislature, federal legislatures, law enforcement, federal and state prosecutors, judges, and both state and county boards of election to cooperate and fulfill these firm demands of the people. The chair is Legislator Shauna Black. The following are simply legislators: Travis L. Brooks, Veronica Pilar, Susan Currie, Rich John, Ann Corman, Mike Sigler, Daniel Klein, Randy B. Brown, Lee Shirtleff, Deborah Dawson, Amanda Champion, Gregory N. Mazer, Michael Law, as recorded on the 7th day of December, 2023. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I believe that's all the cards I have, and I don't know that anyone is on Zoom, so all right, we'll move on. Welcome, Rich.
I apologize for being late. I will go back and watch the video at the beginning of the meeting.
No worries. Thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and do the minutes of the November 2nd meeting. Can I have somebody move that? Mike moves, Rich seconds. Any questions or comments about the previous minutes? All right, all in favor? Thank you, that's unanimous. And let's see, why don't we do the advisory board appointments as well quickly. This is for the Public Information Advisory Board. Paul Boyer, term expires December 31st, 2024, and Carol Kamen, term expires December 31st, 2025. And I would just say that it's good that we're getting a couple more folks interested in joining that board. Somebody move that for me? Rich moves, seconded by Dan. Questions, comments? Rich?
I would just comment that once again, I'm impressed with the quality of the people we have in our community that serve on our advisory boards. We've got some real brains and experience.
Yeah.
It's very helpful to us.
Yes, definitely, I agree. Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. All right, Rich, we're changing a few things. We're gonna move administration up to right now because they need to move on to something else. So let me ask Lisa and Bridget if you have any updates, and then we'll do the two policies.
Sure. Actually, I do have a few updates. It's a busy GEO-related time. I wanted to make the committee aware that on October 29th, I was invited, or November 29th, rather, I was invited to a regional Zoom call convened by New York State Senator Rachel May, who is discussing the concept of a Finger Lakes Commission, forming a Finger Lakes Commission. modeled after the Tug Hill Commission, which was formed 40 years ago. And the purpose of this commission would be to help small rural governments with infrastructure, information, education, and technical support on how to govern. It could help with around items of mutual interest like grant writing. With the Tug Hill Commission, the state provides funding for infrastructure support, including circuit riders who travel to municipalities to discuss rural and local issues of interest. It's really to help bridge the gap for small and remote communities. The Finger Lakes region includes 14 counties. There are some common interests around rural issues, watershed issues, and some future pressure on our region is expected to take place around water resources. So, but it would be of more benefit to our towns and villages that are often looking to the county for these types of support. So she stressed that this is in the early stages of discussion. They're looking for feedback about what would and wouldn't be useful in a bill going forward, looking to see if there's interest. People who were present at the meeting some stated they thought it would be useful, some questioned another layer of bureaucracy, and some, myself, was interested in learning more and sharing the information with our local municipalities. So I plan to reach out to TCOG and have TCOG invite Senator May's staff to come to a future meeting to discuss this. So I just wanted to make you aware of this, that took place. Happy to answer any questions if you have them on that.
Mike?
We're always the outlier as to what region we're a part of. For something like this, they want us because they know we speak about things like this and influence, but in the past we've been lumped in with Southern Tier instead of either Central New York or Finger Lakes. So the 14 counties, are they at all related to the economic development regions, or what's going on, and why did they ask us to be a part of this? I think it sounds to me very intriguing. I like the idea, but I just want to know why us?
As you noted, and it was noted during this meeting, this region includes a few different economic development regions and other types of smaller regions that were created to address watershed issues around individual Finger Lakes. So it would envelop all of those. I think this particular region was selected because of all of the counties that border the Finger Lakes, and looking at that as those natural water resources as the underlying commonality. Yeah.
Mike, I think it's because we're the crown jewel of the state.
Well, we certainly are, no question about that, but they usually don't want us because we skew their economic figures, and some of the regions don't qualify for as much grant aid by lumping us in. So I'm proud of our county, but I just kind of wondered. Thank you for answering that.
And also, she stated that this is not going to be forthcoming in 2024. They wanted to take the next year or so to gather feedback on these types of concerns or interests. Okay. And then also for updates, some of you were able to attend a cybersecurity workshop that was put on this past week with the New York State Department of Homeland Security Services and our ITS department. And that was also open to our municipal partners. That was a full-day workshop, and There were a number of action items identified during that session that will be coming before GO in 2024, including an update of policies and some other items that we'll be following up on. And then finally, the reason why Bridget and I have to duck out a little early today and tomorrow, we're going to be meeting with department heads on the follow-up with on the strategic operations planning process, taking the information gleaned from the legislature and developing strategic objectives. So lots going on, as always.
Questions? Mike?
I think it's good that we held that, and I wish I could have gone to it. I wasn't able to, but happened to see an employee who of the county who will remain nameless right after that, and I asked about it, and that person said it was very scary. And that troubled me because I really have a problem with saying you will use this internet stuff. That's your requirement, and if you do something wrong, it's your fault. And I think we need to be very careful not to frighten our employees with these kinds of things.
Rich, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, I take your point, Mike. They were very clear at this presentation that it's not about assigning blame. The problem is that the ship has sailed. We are dependent on these technologies, and we can't go backwards, and that you will have a breach. You know, it's not an if thing, it's when, and all we can do is make sure we're prepared, try to limit it as much as possible, but one of the proposals that came out of it that I thought was a really good one was for the IT department to have a steering group that really focuses on this and helps us make sure we're as protected as possible and know what to do when it goes wrong. But it was, in fact, the presenter went on at some length about it's not about blame. It just can't be, and it can't be punishment for people who make a mistake, because it will happen. Yeah.
And I would add that at the beginning, we were asked to fill out a card and say, what are you worried about in terms of cybersecurity? And a lot of people said, I'm worried that I'm going to be the one to do it, to make the breach. And exactly what Rich said. They said it's not any one person's fault. Very clearly, like, we have to get our systems as robust as possible. We need training, all of that. But I'm sure we would all agree if something happened and one employee, clicked the wrong link, they would not be punished. It's just, there's so many bad actors, as they say, out there. I mean, we were all like joking and shocked how you can go on the dark web and buy some of this technology for $40. And like, you could become one of these people too, I mean, it was kind of like, it's just so prevalent right now.
Yeah, the scary part was how hard these groups are working to break in all over. And lock down your data and sell it back to you and sell it to third parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else for administration? All right, thank you for the updates. Let's go ahead and go over these two policies. The first one is resolution to update Administrative Policy Manual Policy 01-56, donated goods and services, ID 12065. Can somebody move that? Dan moves, Rich seconds. This seems to be a new policy. We have questions, comments, anything, Bridget or Lisa, you want to say about it?
Well, I would first say this was a new policy that was recommended in part as a result of the ethics investigation, in that we did not have a policy in place or a procedure about how to process or make a decision about donated goods or services to the county.
Questions? Dan?
I just feel like it's good to mention for the public who's listening, the ethics investigation was not about us.
Right.
It was about a different party, but during that investigation, it was noted that we also lacked a certain policy.
Thank you for providing that context.
I just had one question, something that seemed a little vague on packet page 20 at the top, cash donations. Number 1 says cash donations shall be directed to the county. It just like, as opposed to a particular person? Okay. It just seems a little vague, but I guess it makes sense. Okay. Rich?
I read this policy and I was curious. I don't recall us as a legislator ever approving a donation. Have we done that? Mike? You got the best memory?
I can't ever think of anyone just giving us a cash donation, we're approving it, but we have a lot of money that comes in for grants from, let's say foundations. And I'm wondering whether that would need to be approved by this policy, because it's a donation to us for a particular purpose. But it's not, I don't know if we approve those or not. I think.
But we do the resolutions.
Yeah, we do. I mean, but a grant is like a trade for a service. I'm thinking of a donation as more like, well, here's some money, do with it what you want, or here's, a plaque for such and such, or I guess I'm not sure. Lisa?
From my experience at the Office for the Aging, we used to, if an individual that we had worked with passed away, sometimes family members would direct gifts in memoriam to the Office for the Aging, and there was a state policy about those donations could only be utilized to expand the services of the program, but they would come to the county Office for the Aging. We would accept those. So this formalizes that process.
That's only if it's over 5,000.
That's correct.
I think we've accepted a little bit of art once in a while. It's probably not worth more than $5,000 though.
It's true.
We certainly had lots of indirect donations at the Tompkins Center for History and Culture, in that there were substantial donations to the capital program that benefited our building, but they weren't received by us. So I thought that was an interesting.
Who were they received by?
I think the History Center was the conduit. And so that they dealt with the tax gift letters.
Well, I think it's good to have a policy in place, and hopefully this will help. And if changes need to be made, we can always adjust. Any other questions? All right, let's vote. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I just saw my notes from a couple of days ago. I'd forgotten. Packet page 21, under number 3, procedure. The second bullet point. It says consultation with the County Risk and Compliance Administrator to review risk liability implications and ensure that the same contractual review and contract execution process is utilized for paid goods and services is followed, to include a defined scope of work and signed agreement between the donor and the county. So I guess first I was wondering, does that mean, it says the same contract review and execution process, but does that mean the full contract that we do with everybody has to be done for donated goods and services? I mean, that's like dozens of pages long, as I recall.
I think that would probably apply more if it's donated services. Obviously, there would be liability concerns. So I believe that the the regular full contract would be necessary because of indemnification and liability, depending on, the services being donated. I think that the contract can be crafted as necessary. I think we're going to have to look at each of these donations on a case-by-case basis. But I think, depending on the service, it may be necessary to do the full contract.
There's a couple things that I want to ask about. So I'm just making this up. So we have a piece of art and it's fading, and there's some art restoration person who wants to help us out and, fix it up for us. Do they need to be paying living wage and, all the dozens of compliances that we require of businesses and such?
Well, if they're donating their services, then I don't think we would be looking at living wage issues. But if it's a donation.
But this, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
I guess this starts to talk about the contract, which in a different context does require all those things.
Right.
Okay, well then my other point, maybe this is the answer. Should we consider integrating a waiver provision in here that for these kind of, you said on a case-by-case basis, should we consider a waiver provision?
For contracts.
Yeah, depending on how we're interpreting this requirement to have all those dozens of compliance. I might be exaggerating slightly, dozens, but it's a lot. It's dozens of pages.
Rich.
I don't know. Dan, you raise a good point, and it triggered that during the ethics investigation that was done this year and last, we considered this issue of donated services. And I think we addressed it somewhere else in our policies, but I'm thinking, did we? But the idea was, you can't just say, come on in, you're doing it for free. We need to do the same vetting process. But I thought we covered that somewhere else. Okay. So this would do that here, I think. And to expand upon your scenario, Dan, if you had a big corporation that said, yeah, we're going to donate services to restore this artwork, and then they send an employee in to do it, do we want that employee to be paid and all of those things? And I think in those circumstances, we might not want to hold them to all of the typical county contractual provisions.
Mike, did you have something?
I see the operative words here in this section as consultation. And so I think by consulting with the county attorney and the risks, they may recommend something more like the contract, or they may not.
Yeah, we might add the phrase if appropriate or if necessary, because later on we're saying is utilized.
That just adding as necessary, or
I'm a little uncomfortable with that. It's very vague. What are the what would the necessities be?
I think there's a point of judgment. I don't know that we can predict.
But maybe we could give some guidelines what we mean by that, because I'm not sure yet what we mean.
Lisa?
I guess I'm thinking of it as, so in this same example, to carry this out, if this person came on site to restore the artwork for free and was, tripped and fell. So it's to minimize the county's risk. So I think we would be looking at, does this person have insurance? And the type of work that they're planning on doing, rather than, or other, if someone was coming to sit at a desk and type something for us for a day, there's less risk involved there than, a physical type of service. So I think it would be about risk, insurance, I guess those are the parameters that I would see as most applicable with a donated service.
Well, Lisa, I just want, so do you feel comfortable with this language, that it covers all those scenarios, that it gives flexibility and guidance to our compliance officer to?
I think that's the lens through which she was going to be looking, is minimizing the county's risk and liability with donated services. And that's, so I trust that any employee who's in risk and compliance, that's the lens that they're going to be interpreting this language.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Now that we're off and running on hypotheticals, it's like law school. You just can't stop. It's like potato chips or whatever. Reputational risk. That what if we had a donation from a group that was highly ideological or confrontational, dangerous? Does this policy give us discretion to say this is not a donation we want to take?
Yeah. In the beginning, 2B, the county reserves the right to refuse any donation. So I think
that's enough. Okay, you're right. You killed my hypothetical.
you just don't want. Okay.
So I guess, yeah, if as necessary or something like that can be inserted, just to make sure we're giving some out, or, that not every donated service needs to go through our standard contractual process.
Okay, does that work? Okay, anything else? Anybody have anything they want to donate? Okay.
Not over $5,000.
Bag of candy, maybe.
Donated some things, but $5,000.
All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and move resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 05-04, Fund Balances, ID 12004. Somebody move that. Fitch, seconded by...
I have the same question I had with the resolution we had last time. Shouldn't budget do this first?
They did.
Did we do that?
Yeah, we did that last month.
It was coming out. I can't remember we did it. Okay. Then
We did it.
Then never mind.
Will you second it? Okay. Okay. We did talk about it. I can't remember what we said, but we did go on at some length. Questions, comments? Dan?
Okay. I'm going to start out by asking, what is the purpose of making this change? What triggered this idea?
I think it was something that we've been talking about, and I think it came up in budget that we needed to revise our policy, and so that's kind of where the conversation was started. I mean, I think it's been an ongoing conversation all year, people talking about fund balances.
I guess I'm asking, this was needed, you said, needed for what? For what purpose? What are we trying to correct or head off, or what is the reason behind doing this?
Rich?
I think the acronym is GASB. Is that right?
That's the correct acronym, yes.
Yes, and I believe we're not in alignment with best practices that GASB would recommend in terms of fund balance and what we received in terms of reporting from our fiscal advisor on what's best to maintain credit rating.
It's my understanding we are in compliance with the GFAO recommendations, which is a 2-month fund balance. So, I don't know, can someone comment on that? If we're out of compliance or within compliance?
We currently are in compliance as far as best practice of a minimum of 2 months, and we are just at 2 months.
So just to state for the record, if someone disagrees, now is the time to say it. We are in compliance. There is no motivation to change this because we're out of compliance. Is that accurate?
I think you're right, Dan. I'm not disagreeing with that, but the idea is to do better than minimum.
Do you want to respond to that, Mike?
Well, just the overall question that Dan asked, where's it coming from? It goes back to when we changed the policy a couple of years ago during pandemic, which was really different than the county administrator and the director of finance at that time were recommending. And it was disputed when we changed the policy. And I think since then we've had discussions, certainly in budget, about reviewing that, and we decided to make that a goal for this year in budget, and we have done that. Plus, we brought on our new director of finance, who's taken a look at this and made a significant recommendation to us to change the fund balance from looking at revenues to looking at expenditures. And by the way, thank you for that table you sent us last night. And I think that's pretty important. And I think doing, just as Rich said, doing better than the minimum is a goal we should have.
Great, thanks.
Well, I have no issue with using revenues instead of expenses. That's fine. I'm referring to changing the policy from retaining 18% to 25%. I mean, there's really, also you said we've had discussions all year and the questions have come up. Those aren't reasons, those are just facts that people have been talking about it, but I'm looking for, if you have a minimum, that was put there for a reason. So then if you up the number, then you have another minimum. And then aren't you just saying now we have that minimum, and why won't we be discontented with that minimum? Like, the minimum is there for a reason. It's the minimum. But I want to say a little more than that. This is a very big increase. This is not a tweak. Going from 18% to 25%, I just want to make sure everyone's math is the same here. That's not a 7% increase. That is a 45% increase. That's a huge change. And so I'm looking for some solid justification. Somebody said that number was wrong. We have to change it by 45%. That's not the case. We came close to getting below the minimum, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen again. That is not the case. We have some reason to believe that we're about to dive below the minimum. We want to change it. That is not the case. I'm looking for some solid reason to make this substantial change in the policy by 45%. And I'll put it in dollar figures as well. It's $8 million that we're just, this was money that was available before, and now it's not. We're just locking it up in the bank. And again, without a solid reason to do that, I am absolutely opposed to this.
Mike?
And to say it's a 45% increase is a percentage of a percentage. It's not, I'm glad you mentioned the dollar figure, because you've got to start with your basic money that you've got at 18%, and then you would add to that, maybe, if we had it. You say a solid reason. We've talked all year about the fact that we need to be prepared if something happens, and we've looked back at what happened with the pandemic and our ability to pay for things that other counties weren't able to do, such as free testing that kept our county well on the forefront of keeping the amount of COVID down, particularly when we had these university students coming in and out all the time, that they were being able to transmit things. Having money like that, if we have a disaster, let's say we had an ice storm and took down all the power and did damage to the roads and things. Look what happened in the North Country when they had an ice storm a decade or so ago. These kind of things can happen, and to say, well, we'll just keep the minimum in there and we'll spend the rest, I suppose is an argument, but it's not an argument that I think is a good one when we're looking at conservative budgeting and conservative spending for our taxpayers.
To be clear, I never said we're going to spend the rest, and Deborah also uses that argument. It's very,
Well, I was
it's
here.
not okay.
I was here 2 or 3 years ago when that was the big discussion. How much money we got to spend was the big question.
Hang on, Rich. I want to just say, I think that in my mind, it's not right or wrong if you want to save money or you want to have the money available. I think it's a preference. It's an opinion. I mean, I think of my own personal life and how much do I personally put in the bank. I could spend it, but do I want to keep it in case something goes wrong? Yeah. So to me, it's not really even about facts. And I think that's why, there's just this range of opinions on, what is the right number here or there. That doesn't even really necessarily matter. I mean, if what we're being told is this is the minimum needed for, to be in compliance, like, yes, we need to meet that. But in my mind, personally, I'd rather save more than that. And I'm okay with that because of the things that Mike said. If something happens and we need that, or it could be very far down the line that something happens and we need that, and I'd rather know it's there. So that's where I'm coming from, and I just think it's like we have had these conversations all year, and I think maybe that was the impetus in budget to, like, let's see if we need to change the policy. I don't think it's to meet some law or anything like that. So anyway, Rich.
Yeah, I agree with what Mike said and you, Amanda. I would add to that from a credit rating standpoint, I had met with Drew and asked, could we have that presentation that I thought was really great that the whole legislature saw. One of the takeaways from it, I believe, is that the system they use is not fair for a community like ours in that they treat college students as poor people. And so they're looking at this county as being poorer than it really is. Drew mentioned the BMW argument that, no, come look at the cars on the street. And no, this is, they have financial capacity at home that they're bringing with them. And there isn't going to be a default situation because these are poor people. The rating agencies don't properly account for that. They don't look at university communities. So we're at a disadvantage to begin with. One of the ways we can counteract that, one of the few ways, is fund balance. That having a robust fund balance is part of our argument back to them saying, no, we need the highest rating you can give us. And our last rating meeting, we were very close. We argued to where we are now. It was not where we started. And I look at the city, which has allowed its bond rating to deteriorate. I think they're down to AA4 in their last one, and they're probably going to do a borrowing at the beginning of the year. It may get worse. What you end up paying an interest cost on borrowing, and your ability to borrow may eventually get constrained. We're nowhere near there, and I never want to go near there. So that, to Amanda's point, this is opinion. That's my opinion. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I view it differently. Yeah.
Yeah, Lori.
Want me to input in on this, but when I was asked to review this policy, there's a few things I looked at. And one of the overriding things that helped me with that decision to recommend the 25% was in conversations with Moody's. And they stated to me that across the country, the only municipalities that have the highest bond rating that you can obtain is those that have a 35% targeted unassigned fund balance. So I wasn't suggesting we go to 35%, but 25% I thought was a good number to strive towards. Also, the GFOA recommended practice that recommends a minimum of 2 months also says to look at your risks. And any risks that you have, you need to increase it from that 2 months. And I looked at some of the risks that were mentioned here at many of the meetings, such as we just said, ice storms, emergencies, pandemics. Even this week when we went to the cybersecurity, they talked about ransomware. We have to have a significant fund balance to be able to cover those sorts of things. And the last thing I looked at was, although you had a policy of what your targeted fund balance was over the years, what was it actually? What were you operating at? And since 18, when I did that historical analysis, didn't matter if you were doing revenues or expenditures, your actual unassigned balance was always, the lowest it ever was in those years was 24% of revenues and 27% of expenditures. So that's how really your past practice you've been operating. This just kind of formulates it and puts it into, so everybody understands what it is, I guess. So that's how I came up with my recommendation.
Thank you. Dan.
Do one more round and then I'll stop. So the what if scenarios, that was very interesting. There's a big difference though between saying by practice we have already been at this level and saying we cannot use that money anymore. That's a big difference and that's what I'm objecting to. As far as the bond rating, so let's be clear, no county has a higher bond rating than us. No county ever will. We never will. I hope we can get rid of that daydream. And we haven't had our bond rating lowered. So I find this idea that we better tuck away $8 million more in case they decide in the future to lower our bond rating. I find that a very faulty logic, and I don't buy into it. If that happens and we want to take action then we can. But it's fear of something that hasn't happened, and I don't accept that premise. I'll also point out that this bond, the holy bond rating idea is, I wish I had had the numbers with me because they were provided at some point. We're talking about in the tens of thousands that it might affect our actual payments, our debt payments, if our bond rating were lowered one notch. Tens of thousands a year. So the idea that you will take $8 million and lock it away here so that maybe in the future you can save tens of thousands of dollars is illogical to me. If we have the $8 million and we need it, let's use it for some of it for that. It's going to be a fraction of it. It's not a good use of money to lock away $8 million so that you'll save maybe save a few tens of thousands in the future. And then the last thing I want to say is that I was here for COVID too, and yeah, unexpected things come up, and we did make bigger expenditures that year, and there was lots of uncertainty, and we came nowhere near spending down to our minimum fund balance, nowhere near it. So it's just, to me, it's just fear of an unknown future potential catastrophe, and I think we're already well covered for that, and I do not think locking up $8 million for that purpose is sound.
Great. Thank you. I think it is exactly what you said, and I think it is sound. Rich?
Yeah, no, I don't want to belabor it, but the reason for maintaining it goes beyond just having the money to lower interest rates. It's to have the money that we're ready, and that was a great thing, I think, during the pandemic, that we were ready. I think it also sends a message to our taxpayers that we are being fiscally prudent. You know, some people would say, no, let me have the money back. But you only do it once. You know, you build the castle and you sit in it. That we've got it. We're not doing this every year. It's just making sure the set point is at 25% instead of 18. I'm okay with that.
All right. Thank you all. Anything else? Mike?
I don't want to belabor it either, but I was here when we were doing budgets, and our fund balance was more like 8 or 10%. And we were having to dip into that to balance our budget. That's back when we had a very heavy rollover policy, which we weren't adding to our fund balance. We were spending it every year. So maybe that's one of the reasons I'm a supporter of having a strong fund balance.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. Excuse me, all in favor? That's, excuse me, 3, all opposed? That's 1, that passes. Great, thank you all for talking about that. Thank you, Lisa and Bridget.
Thank you.
Good luck with strategic planning. And now we're going to go back to Jay, Department of Assessment, to talk to us for a while.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Okay.
So a couple months ago, I think during your budgets discussion, I got an email saying, hey, can we phase in assessments? So, I mean, that's a simple answer. The simple answer is no. It is illegal to assess people at different percentages. And I'm sorry, Rich, did I put up the report on your desk? Brittany, can you, I have there's one coming right there, sorry. So I went back and I started watching the budget meetings just to see where this question may have come from, because I think there's a lot of confusion as to really what my job does and how it affects taxes. So quite simply, phasing in assessments really isn't going to do anything. This is going to make the distribution of the tax burden inequitable. And that's not something that I want to do. You know, the main premise behind everything that I do in my office is fairness and equity. You know, our job is to distribute whatever tax burden the taxing jurisdictions vote on in the fairest way possible. And you can debate what that is, but through an ad valorem tax, the most fair way to distribute those taxes are based upon the value of property. So that's what the assessment process does. We do not determine the amount of taxes that is generated. That's done through budget votes, through the legislature. We all get to vote on our school budgets, even though nobody does. You know, we track around 10% for our school budget votes, which really irks me. When people come in and complain about their taxes, but they don't go out on that third Tuesday in May, I believe, and really express themselves through voting, which is the best way they could actually do something. They can really affect school district votes. But I also think they don't know what they're voting on when they go for their school districts. You know, just last year we had a school district in the county say, we're not going to raise taxes. We're going to keep the tax rate the same. Every time a property owner would call that school district and say, hey, my taxes went up 8.5%, the school districts will say, well, that's because your assessment went up. They would never admit to spending 8.5% more money, which was about $8 million more than what they did in the previous year. So they kept the tax rate the same, but were able to generate a lot more money. And I think a lot of this confusion comes into people talking about the tax rate. You know, I just saw an article in the Tompkins Weekly. A town has a 2% tax decrease because of all of the funding they were able to get from other sources. Well, in reality, their town levy is up 10% this year. Their ambulance levy is up 11.9, and their fire protection district is up 13%. But yet the headline was, it adopted a 2024 budget, includes a tax decrease. Now that's a significant tax increase. My office, Dom is great, but my office just doesn't have the PR capability to combat these misleading headlines. So my office is the one that gets those blames. So I wholeheartedly agree that taxes here are a problem, but to be clear, the assessment is not the problem. The assessment makes sure that that burden is distributed equitably. That burden is the issue. So how can we address that issue? And one way we can do that is to stop the annual reassessment program and to start valuing at a fractional value. By doing so, we're going to stop the tax base from increasing. That's going to stop these taxing jurisdictions from saying, well, we kept the tax rate the same, blame it on Jay and his office. He's the one that's jacking up assessments and have these high assessments which are causing your tax base, your tax increase. So with that proposal, I would suggest that we abandon that annual reassessment program and go to a triennial cycle. And I have a couple key points. Quite frankly, my office isn't staffed to do an annual reassessment program of every single parcel every single year. And 2024 will be our third year in a row of pretty much doing that. It's great. We have a great market here. We have a appreciating real estate market in most cases for residential, but we just don't have that staff. And I don't know if it's fiscally responsible for you to staff my office at a level that I need to, because in a year, the market may tank. And I'll be dropping values, and it'll be a lot easier to drop values. But then I can't just drop 4 more staff or 5 more staff members. That's not, I don't think, is appropriate. We should staff our office at a level that's fiscally responsible and be able to manage the typical workload of my office. I think property owners are getting fatigued. Last year we made 26,000 assessment changes. Only 5% came in and contested it. Do they believe us? Do they trust us? Are they just, yeah, I just got another letter, I'm just not going to go in? Typically when you make assessment changes, 15% of those changes come in. We only had 5. We've historically tracked around 11%. So are they fatigued? My office is fatigued. We lost a lot of people during COVID to the county's early retirement incentive. So I had to replace those with new employees, and we stuck them in cars and said, go out and appraise these properties. That's only a portion of the assessment office's job. They're missing out on that sort of training. And plus, you see the same people come in every year. You see the same houses again. It's kind of hard to get up and excited about your job when it's the same thing you just did last year. I talked about the tax base increases are equaling the tax levy increases. If you look on the bottom of my first page, where tax base grows, so does the tax levy grows. The one year that we didn't really increase values due to that first year of COVID, the tax base didn't grow. But the next year when we went up 8%, tax levies went up 8.8%. On the second page, you'll see the municipalities. I'll call out Lansing. I'm sitting in Lansing's desk. Lansing last year had a 21.8% increase in their tax levy. When that went out on the tax bills, I got a couple phone calls from town board members. Jay, how can that happen? How can we be spending 21.8% more? I'm like, I don't know that. You're the ones who voted on the budget. Even though I live there, I don't really look at line items from year to year. So I'm sure I'm going to get that same question from them this year by them increasing their levy again 15.6%. Look at the city of Ithaca. Last year they like to keep their tax rate the same. They're doing that this year. So to have a 5% taxable base growth and then a 5% levy growth, that's very coincidental when they go out to 2 digits on their tax rate for $11.98 per thousand. I don't know if they're really calculating what their levy is in order to hit that tax rate exact out to 6 digits. That's pretty impressive to me. By changing to an annual reassessment program, we will keep that equity on the assessment roll. What your assessment is isn't important. What your assessment is in relation to everybody else's is important. If you look at my assessment's $251,000, or I'm responsible for 0.02114% of the Lansing School District levy. So whether you look at their tax rate of $19.17 or I'm responsible for 0.02%, my tax bill comes out to $4,800. So whether we're assessing at 80%, 60%, we will continue to distribute that tax burden equitably. But hopefully that tax burden won't increase and be hidden through tax base increases. We're in a crazy residential market right now. We saw some of that in the commercial market a little bit while ago, where we saw commercial buyers weren't really buying based upon the income producing ability of the property today, but they were building in future appreciation into their purchases. We talked to buyers of apartments and they say, we're gonna end up losing money for these first 3 years. Hopefully we'll be able to increase rents, expenses may come down, and hopefully in 10 years I'll be able to sell the property for 30% more, and that's where I'm gonna end up making my money. Well, as the assessor, I can't say your property is going to be worth 20% more today because I think it's going to be worth 30% more in 10 years. We don't predict the future, we only reflect the past. So we're looking at that current income producing ability of that property. Now, have we gotten to that point with residential properties? We're talking to buyers and they say, yes, I think we can afford this high interest rate today. But I think in 3 years, interest rates will come down and we'll be able to refinance and lower our payment. But we'll also be here for 10 years, so by the time we get to that end, we'll be able to sell the property at least for what we bought it for. That's kind of the same arguments that I'm hearing from commercial properties. And I think what's really going to be interesting is to see what the results of the NAR lawsuit is across the country, with the realtors colluding over their commissions. That has caused sale prices to go up. I was talking to a group of realtors and said, I'm seeing these sales, and the sales that aren't going for much higher than what I thought they will aren't involving a realtor. And the realtor said, yes, please make sure you tell everybody that. I don't know if that's a good thing. So if you have a realtor, you're going to end up paying more for a property. If you missed out on 8 properties, is your bid on that 9th property really indicative of the market value of that property? Or are you just bidding because your realtor said, I think you need to bid much higher on this property? So I think we're going to see a change there, and I don't really know. I'm not well versed in that, but I think it's interesting. I've had discussions where I don't know if we really want to sell the property according to a ground lease, because will realtors really want to work for that lower commissioned price? That's very interesting to me. The switch would be confusing. We did it in 2006 and 2007. We spent a lot of time explaining to the public why we did it. One thing we didn't have back then is we didn't have Dom, and I think Dom would be more than capable of being able to explain that change a little bit better than I was able to explain that change. Or Valeria was able to explain that change back then. So I think by doing this, we're able to do it. And another thing, in those interim years, we're not going to have those interclass shifts. One thing that we've seen is our residential properties have really increased in value, but our commercial properties haven't. Those office space have really been crippled with the remote working, and the support industries that go along with it have also been affected. If you just walk downtown at lunch, you're not going to see anybody hitting up the lunch spots, the pizza places, the sub shops. Those places have really lost value due to the lack of people here in downtown, whether that's through remote work or through their safety concerns. You just don't see people walking around. Now, it pains me to actually come here and say, hey, I think we should go and do a triennial reassessment cycle. Annual reassessment is by far the most transparent way to assess properties. You can equitably distribute that tax burden assessing at 1%, 50%, 100%. So in order to stop these levies from increasing out of control like they have, I don't know of a way to do it other than to stop the tax base increases. Because for me, just saying, hey, you know, I don't know why you're spending 21.8% more last year and 15.6% more this year. It's not because of assessments went up. It's because elected officials made the decision to spend more. On the third page, I kind of did a comparison of what annual and triennial would look like. For 2024, you know, we'd anticipate sending out 28,000 assessment change notices. You know, we're looking at a tax base growth of 12%, give or take. We still have a couple more towns to do. Or we could send out about 6,000 assessment changes and be valuing at, say, 85% instead. For future years, I don't know what I need to do for an annual reassessment program in 2025. We'll have to see where the market is as of July 1 of 2024, come out with our work product, but also try to figure out how to do everything that we haven't done. And during my budget presentation this year, you heard a lot of stuff that we haven't done because we haven't had time or the staff. So for 2025, I'd want to review all of our ag parcels, make sure they're actually being used, make sure the Sawyer Group worksheets match up. We got to go to a digital sketch software. Way back when Joe was still here, we converted all of our digital sketches. The state was supposed to create a new database for us, which the state then killed and said, no, we're not doing it. So now I need to go look and try to find a digital sketch program to be able to maintain those records. I got to focus on training for our assessment staff. We need to implement RPTL 520. So this is when a property, someone buys a property that's subject to a senior or a veteran's exemption. They should have to pay back those pro rata taxes, but we just don't have the staff to be able to manage that program. The same for 26 and 27 for annual. I don't know where we'll be. I am concerned about the 2026 assessment roll. In October of 2025, it's the 6-year reappointment cycle for assessors, and a lot of town assessors are going to be retiring, and there's going to be a lack of assessors. I think there's going to be a run on them. So I'm concerned. A lot of my staff live out of the county. I think they could pick up an assessor job closer to home, and then I'm going to be out. Or you all will be out of an assessor as well. That's not a threat. I've loved my job here, but you know, I have been approached and I don't want to leave, but it may get to that fiscally responsible level for me of making that decision. We'll see where that goes. But I'm more concerned about my staff because change in 2025 when I'm retiring in 2028, I just don't see that. But I'm more concerned about my staff on that. I have to review all of the databases that I created. You know, I created our tax bill program. I don't know if someone else can manage that program or would want to. So I'm going to be relying on our IT department to try to help me replace a lot of these databases that I created for our use in order to further on. And then finally, you know, in 2026, we'll start our 2-year kind of reval work. We'll start working on those vacants, commercial properties, the farmland, so that by the time 2027 rolls around, we'll be able to get back to that 100%. And hopefully kind of relieve some of that burden on the property owners. Like I said, annual is still the best way to go, but if we're concerned about taxes, I think tax levy increases have been hidden in a tax rate discussion. And I really appreciate the county legislature for being at the forefront of really letting people know what your spending decisions mean to their tax bills. And not just say, oh, you know, we had a tax increase because our tax rate went down 6%. So thank you for that. You are the poster child for transparency in your levies and rates. But any questions?
That was a lot. Yeah, Mike, then Rich.
First part of your talk here was deja vu for me because I was saying exactly what you were saying about the triennial back in 2005. In 2005, our assessments were going up very rapidly. People were very, very upset. We were doing annual, your department wasn't under you. The department had instituted annual reassessments, and people were enraged over that. At that time, I argued that we should go with the triennial. And the director of assessment came in here in tears that we would not continue the annual reassessments, and literally in tears at that time. And I was a bad guy, and I lost re-election that year because that was one of my planks in my platform. But they did go to a triennial, and basically saved up all of the increases, and then at the third year instituted the whole group, and people were not happy about that. And assessment people were saying, well, see, we told you we need to do the annual reassessments. So I don't have any doubt that what you're saying is painful, to say triennial rather than annual. But I think we need to look at your department and see whether we need to be doing that. I also don't think it's the responsibility of the assessment department to say that the levies are out of control and somehow we have to make a change so we control the levies of the towns and villages and cities and other places. It's admirable, but I don't think it's your responsibility to do that. We do have a tax cap in the state, like it or not, which are, if they go to a 9% increase in their levy, they're having to override the tax cap of wherever they are. I certainly have become changed my view over the years because we already instituted it, to believe that the fairest way is the annual reassessment. And if it takes more people, I think we ought to do it. That's what my feeling is on it. But Jay, this is a very, very thoughtful and very interesting document that you gave us, and I understand it 100% what you're saying and why you're saying it. But sometimes we do, in Tompkins County, we do the hard things. We raised our costs on recycling rather than take it to the dump a couple of years ago. We made that decision to do that, for example. Maybe we need to look at this again, and I would just say that if administration wanted to do that, take a look at it, I would be supportive of that.
Great, thanks, Mike. Rich?
Jay, thank you for all of this information. And I think I need to consider further the triennial review question. I'm not sure where I come out on that. But I think I triggered some of this because I think I was the one who made the comment about how the assessments have risen so rapidly in some areas. And certainly if you're not seeing a tax levy increase, some properties are seeing real dramatic growth in value and others aren't. And so you see the tax increase that the municipality does and then your increased assessment and the impact on the actual check you write for your taxes is dramatic. And I've heard this from lots of constituents and I felt it because I'm in the Ithaca City School District. The question I had was, can you do full valuation but phase in so that you get some smoothing of it? Because I'm afraid part of what we're seeing is a real estate bubble. And when you have a real estate bubble, obviously assessments jump up and then they jump down. And I don't think that's a healthy way to tax taxpayers. But it sounds like there's no way to under New York state law to accommodate that issue. That's what you were saying at the beginning.
Correct. I mean, there is, with full disclosure, there is New York City and Nassau County that do that, but they're special assessing units, and they have their own special laws to be able to treat people inequitably.
Well, I'm not sure it's inequitably, because you're creating your opinion as to value, saying, here's the trend, we think it's going to go here, and then you temper it year by year, saying, well, it didn't go up that much, or now it plummeted. You smooth it on the way up, you smooth it on the way down. Is that equitable? It's a system. I don't know that it's one or the other. You know, and I also take your point that when the Ithaca City School District raises taxes 8.5%, the public should know, and we don't seem to be having that public discussion. It's really unfortunate what's happened to local media, or, you know, getting people organized. Maybe it gets bad enough that people actually do vote in the school board elections, which I don't understand why they have them in June rather than at the same time everybody else has elections, so that you'd get better turnout and participation. I'd love to see New York State change that, among other things. I'll stop.
Thanks. Dan?
Jay, there's a lot to absorb here, so I'm not, going to take some time with this, but I had a few thoughts. One is, I really like seeing this table of consolidated information about the tax growth and the rates and all that. It's really hard to get this information anymore. Like someone said, the media is just not doing it. I'm wondering, would it be hard for you to make this table even go back a few more years, or is that information pretty easy for you to get?
Oh, I have a lot more data than just this. Yeah, ever since, I want to say 2004, when Bruce Estes was still with the Ithaca Journal, every year he had me create what a tax levy was, and even when he left, I still continued that on. So you'll be able to see the tax-based growth from 2004 all the way through today. I've just included that also just for the general levy, but we also have to look at those other fees that people try to not say that they're taxes, but they're still fees. You know, I've seen the headline, there's a minuscule tax increase, but when you create 2 more taxes, that's a $250 increase as opposed to minuscule. So that's where I also build in all of those other charges, the water, the sewer charges, so I can send that chart off to you. It also builds into the sales tax offset as well. You know, a lot of places will say, hey, look, our town rate is so low. Well, that's because you use sales tax in your money as opposed to using it to offset the county rate. The town rate, the town levy and the county levy are left pocket, right pocket. It's going to come out of one of them, whether you use the sales tax to let less money come out of your left pocket or sales tax to have less money come out of your right pocket. The same levy is going to come out either way you do that.
Yeah, thank you. That little piece of it is very hard to explain to people, and took me a long time, and I still don't really fully have it. So, Jay, you are saying it would be easy enough for you to take this chart and send it back in time a little more?
Yep, I will email it out probably at some point after strategic planning meeting, or if that's an exciting meeting, maybe during it.
I certainly no rush on my part. Can you add school districts in too? Is that easy enough for you to do?
I do have somewhat similar for school districts. The problem with school districts is I don't process all of the school districts' taxes, and I only have the share of the 15 school districts that touch Tompkins County for our levy within that district. But, you know, Lansing is the only self-contained school district that we have in the county. So that's the only one that I could really get that good information on. But with Ithaca City, I run those taxes so I can get that. So yes, you can get it.
And the villages, could you add those?
Yep.
I'm with you. And then my question, I want to understand, if we go to a triennial reassessment, does that change the 100% figure automatically? Is that, are those two things linked?
Yes. So typically what you could do, like say everybody's value went up 10%. So there's two ways of getting there. You could increase everyone's assessment by 10% and then you stay at 100%. Or you could say, all right, we're not going to change everyone's assessment, so their assessment is now is still 90% of really what their value would be, what their market value is. So that's where that level of assessment then changes. So it's just a mathematical formula. You know, if you're at 90%, you're a little bit more based upon those percentages. So, you know, at your $100,000 assessment, if it went up 10%, you could say, all right, you're not going to be assessed at 110. Or you could say, all right, you're going to be assessed at 90%, but your $100,000 assessment divided by 0.9 now comes out to $111,111.
So I think it was like a year ago, we spent some time talking about this less than 100% assessment, and it's really hard for me to grasp. I mean, I get the basic idea of what you're saying. I don't understand why they're linked, though. I don't understand. Can you not do a triennial reassessment at 100%? Is that not possible?
No, because every year, according to New York State real property tax law, you have to annually assess properties at a uniform percentage of value. So you have to make sure that everyone's assessed at 100%, everyone's assessed at 90%, 60%. Now, there's a lot of places that don't do that. But what the law says that you should do, and you want to make sure that taxes are distributed equitably, you want to make sure that everyone is uniformly assessed. You know, there's places in New York that haven't done a reassessment since the Civil War. I say that all the time. There is no way their taxes are distributed equitably. But the places who typically benefit from this are the higher valued properties. They're the ones that are going to increase more than the lower valued properties. So you're putting the tax burden on those places that don't have the means if you don't make sure that you're adjusting values. So the richer neighborhoods benefit from the poorer neighborhoods' peril.
So, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So let me see if I got this right. On a triennial reassessment, are 1/3 of the properties reassessed every year? Is that?
No.
Okay.
No. You're more or less giving people a break in those 2 years. The tax base isn't going to increase. And I wholeheartedly agree that I shouldn't have to be here and talking about tax levies. But when I get blamed by town boards and school districts for raising assessments, which somehow means they have to spend more money, then that's why I'm here presenting you with an option of, hey, you know, here's blame being put onto me. Here's a way to alleviate that blame. I'm more than happy to take any blame for any assessment on any property. If I'm wrong, I'll fix it. If I'm right, I'll defend it. I cannot defend spending. Or if you want to give me another vote, no, I don't want that. That's not a decision I want. I don't want to have to make those hard decisions, weighing programs, what to fund, how much to fund in whole. I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want to be here. I want to be on annual doing what my job is. But there's unintended consequences, which is why I'm here bringing this up.
So there's no way to do, I guess I would call it a rolling assessment? Every year, a third of them a third of properties get reassessed?
No, because the main law that I have to section is Real Property Tax Law, Section 305. All properties have to be assessed at a uniform percentage of value.
So under a triennial reassessment, more or less, nobody or a tiny number would get reassessed for a couple of years, and then in the third year, everyone would get reassessed?
Correct.
Which would then potentially, depending on what happens, everybody would go up at that point.
Correct. But hopefully everyone goes up so significantly or down significantly that a tax rate discussion couldn't be hidden in a 30% increase in the tax rate.
Right. Okay. Rich, do you have your hand up again?
Dan kind of asked.
Yeah, this is a lot to digest, and we've had conversations over the years. I know this isn't what you prefer, as you've always said. So are you looking for something from us right now? Do you want to have another conversation? What?
Well, I think what I would like is, if you want me to come back with a resolution to direct me to go to triannual at the next GO meeting. That way it could get on the board to be discussed.
Okay.
Whether you vote it down, that's great. I'm not in favor of it, but it would solve an unintended consequence. And another thing is it would bring it to light. Hopefully this discussion, someone's going to pick up on it. I know Brian's probably watching, maybe the only one. But if this discussion can come to light and people will take responsibility for their actions, I'm more than willing to take the responsibility for any decision my office makes. Said it multiple times in this meeting. But I can't take responsibility for things I don't have influence over.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't personally want to go that direction, but I'm not opposed to having more conversation if folks want to see a resolution next. Okay. Do other people want to have a resolution that we could discuss, invite other legislators to come talk about?
That was what I was thinking. I think we need everyone in on this conversation. This is pretty big.
Rich?
Yeah, I think I agree with Dan. The other thing I would ask Jay and Dom to do is this information that you've been asked for, if we could try to get that out into the public. I think this is a discussion that not just the legislators, but a county of people need to get their heads around. Yeah.
Okay, Susan and Rich, do you want to see a resolution?
Don't necessarily. I mean, I just think the discussion is really important.
Okay.
I would move the resolution so we could have the discussion. I don't know how I'd vote on it.
Okay. Okay. Maybe if we have a resolution, that will bring another opportunity to discuss and, yeah. Okay. Does that make sense? Does that work for you?
Yep, no, I think it's good, the discussion. For me, it can't hurt having more of this discussion for more people to be educated.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've learned is I know town boards do not know the difference between tax levies, tax rates, tax base, and even watching your budget discussions, a lot of you all will get those terms kind of interchanged between a tax levy increase and a tax rate increase. And when I hear you all talking about it, I know what you're talking about, but you just use a little bit wrong terminology now and then and interchange those two, and they're not the same.
Yeah, we need to have our own training about this for everyone. Did you send this to us in email?
No, I will. I just
Okay.
printed it off this morning.
Yeah, and I can send an email to legislators and ask them to watch this part of the meeting and just, that this is an important discussion that we're having and they should join in on. Okay. Anything else? Mike?
Jay, you commented about the potential shortage for your appraisers and people in your department. Have you had any discussion with TC3 about like a micro-credential to try to get people interested in doing that kind of work?
Yeah, we've talked, I kind of wear both hats. I'm the assessor, but I also sit with the real property tax directors. And since pre-COVID, we were talking about a mentorship, somehow trying to get younger people into this profession. And it's kind of odd for me to say that because I still think I'm the 24-year-old who started here, but when I look in the mirror in the morning, I'm not. But we've talked about community colleges.
It's the beard.
You just, there's not the awareness of government. You know, the allure of a government job isn't nearly as lucrative as it once was. You know, that nice pension you're going to get at the end. You know, most people want to jump around in jobs now, and moving to government really doesn't give you that flexibility. But we have talked about those community college issues. Another issue that's kind of played in is the appraisal industry has changed. The requirements that it takes to become a licensed fee appraiser are so much that you don't get appraiser trainees anymore. You know, before all of my people retired, they all worked as independent fee appraisers for banks, and then they came to my office. So they were trained in the appraisal, but now there's just not those appraiser trainees, which can then move over to government after they've kind of built their profession up. So it's not just an assessor issue, it's an appraisal issue as well. You know, probably the average age of the fee appraiser in New York State is probably into their 60s.
That's why I was wondering if maybe this micro-credential program that they've started for a number of areas might solicit people to want to come into that. Real estate agents and other people that might work on that. So maybe a discussion with the provost up at the college would be.
Yeah, I'll work with Bridget to try to get me in a connection up there too.
Okay, we need to move on. We got numerous other things. Did you need to add to this?
Just a quick question. I agree with what Mike suggests for TC3, but what are the banks doing? Are they winging it?
No, there are very few appraisers. I think a lot are using an AVM, an automated valuation model. Some banks will actually just look at our assessment, and if you're not taking out any more money, back when they were refinancing like crazy. But we've had a lot less sales, so there's a lot less need for appraisals. And I know one of the local offices, you know, they did have a trainee, and I think I heard that they had to lay that person off just because they don't have the work coming in right now. But that's going to be a big issue in this country moving forward. You know, the reason why the 2008 bubble popped was because of the ball rolling with values going up and appraisals keep hitting it. So to move to an AVM model for all loans, that's not going to be good for our economy.
Susan?
What is the term you're using, automated assessment?
Automated valuation model. So it's like a multiple regression formula that's developed where you put in some figures and it'll spit out a value, kind of like your Z estimate that you'll get on Zillow. So, you know, appraisals is an art and a science. You can get to a lot of those figures, but it's your appraiser's knowledge to say, no, I see that property, I know what it's going to sell for based upon my experience.
All right, well, thank you. Always informative when you're here, Jay.
Thank you.
You have a resolution on the floor?
No, next month. He'll bring.
Oh, I thought we were moving to
Well, there are the three kind of.
Bring a resolution.
Not related to this, no.
Oh, okay. So we're going to consider that next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do these added ones, though, while Jay is here. Should all have them. So returned village taxes, resolution ID 12093. Mike moves. Rich seconds. Questions, comments? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. Resolution ID 12095, return school taxes. Can somebody move that? Mike, seconded by Rich. Similar questions, comments? These are ones we do every year. All in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. And resolution ID 12096, adoption of apportionment of taxes for 2024. Can somebody move that? Mike moves, seconded by Rich. Questions, comments? All right, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
And it's interesting how our discussions are all related, because
Yes.
the return of the village and school taxes, which is so important that we do that, we have to allocate some of our fund balance so that we have the cash to pay for that until we get reimbursed.
Or we could lower those tax bases, lower our tax levies with the fund balance too. So I guess there's two sides to everything, huh?
Rich.
Speaking of everything being connected, the second whereas we're saying the county guarantees, is this something where we could address the costs of repossessions and sales?
Wait, which are you talking about?
Talking about the return on the villages and school districts.
What's your question again?
Well, we're facing an issue with foreclosures on having to reimburse the towns, villages, and schools for their full tax money, and then we may get hit up saying we have to pay back the owner when we take a loss on a sale. So, am I making any sense here at all?
No.
You are, but what's your remedy?
Take out guarantee here. Do we have to do that by New York State law?
Mike.
Got charged back, we charge them back, it seems. Is that true, Lori?
I'm not real familiar on the law and what it says, and I'm not sure we can add that in until all that's been settled, but I don't know. It's a great point, though.
Next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, but I know there is a task force, and I'm got reassigned to the Real Property Tax Administration Committee, and we'll be talking about this. Luckily, we're kind of insulated here because we really don't lose value or lose money on these properties. If you think of taxes being 3% of your property's worth, if you're making sure that the assessment is correct, the tax burden should be a lot less than the value of the property that you're going to sell. I think where you're seeing this play out as a problem is where the town assessor doesn't do their job and doesn't reduce the value on a property. That's going to give it a much higher tax burden than it should have. So when you try to sell it at auction, the value is going to be much less than what you're getting in taxes. So here we're able to adjust those values. And talking to other real property tax directors, unless you're in a city that you can't give away a property due to its surrounding community, it's those places that aren't adjusting values. But I think in the vast majority of cases, I think we put away $300,000 this year as part of our foreclosure into the bank's escrow. So we really don't have that, but I know there is a lot of talk at the state level to see, and I would hope that when they get to that, if we sell a property for less, then the towns, the schools, the village would have to share in that burden. But as of now, if you put a $50,000 demolition lien on a property on the tax bill, the counties are taking hits over that. But luckily, we're not Monroe, Onondaga. We're not to that point here.
Didn't mean to slow the meeting down. Sorry.
And I talk too much now.
All right. Thank you all. Let's move on to, we have Board of Elections, a couple of resolutions. And Alana is here if we have questions. Technology Innovation and Election Resource Grant Acceptance, ID 12076. Can I get somebody to move that? Rich moves, seconded by Susan. Questions, comments? Alana, is there anything you want to tell us about this grant?
The same one they got last year. Just additional money.
Okay. Additional money that, I didn't quite hear you at the beginning, that from last year?
Yeah, they reappropriated some funds and gave us some more money.
Okay, reappropriation. Questions? Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. And second one, absentee ballot prepaid postage grant acceptance, ID 12063. Somebody move, Rich moves, seconded by Dan. Always nice to get money for postage. Questions, comments? Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alana. Okay, let's go down to legislature. Establishing meeting dates for 2024. Resolution ID 11965. Can somebody move that? Rich moves, seconded by Dan. Again, this is one we do every year. Questions, comments? Mike?
I didn't ask.
I know.
You know, I think we should meet twice in July, and because of that, I don't know whether it's worth my making an amendment to this or not, whether that would pass.
It's like the newspaper resolution.
Yeah.
Have to have the discussion.
Yes, exactly.
There was an article about newspapers down in another county, and there are huge lawsuits going on about designating papers.
Yep, so just note that this allows for one meeting in July instead of our usual 2.
It looks like the calendar favors us in regard to NISAC.
If I move to add the other meeting, is there support for that here? I don't want to just spin my wheel.
Do it at the full legislature.
I would do it at the full legislature, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right, all in favor? That's 4. Opposed is 1. And so that passes. But we will discuss it again at the legislature. Okay. Then we have our end of the year report for legislator travel and training spending. Thank you, Katrina and Brittany, for putting the chart together of what conferences folks have been to and the costs. Looks like we went just over, which is pretty good. Just a reminder that we did talk about in the budget process that we would be increasing this amount for each legislator to have, like, was it $1,200?
15.
I don't remember off the top of my head. It was to increase for each legislator, and the chair would also have an additional.
Right. Questions, comments? Yeah.
Just a quick one this just drives on that point, which is why we increased the travel training, which is if you just do the basic New York State Association of Counties conference, which we kind of, I think that's our kind of minimum thing that we kind of guarantee people that's already over $1,000.
Yeah, their costs have gone up, so therefore ours have. Rich?
I just note there are 4 legislators who didn't spend any money, for better or worse. You know, there's a real range here in terms of individual legislators spending money on training and not. I don't know which is better or worse, but
yeah.
I find the value of the NISAC conference high, so I think it is worth trying to attend, but it's
yeah.
money.
And it does, beg the question, if every legislator, like, we sort of assume that some legislators won't attend a conference, and then other legislators, may take up a little bit extra, but, it may happen that every legislator, if they want to go, or they have another conference that they want to go to, the question did come up at the end of this year of someone who had already been to a conference who wanted to attend another conference, and it may be that we have to say no, or you can attend, but, the county can't pay for it. So I guess, this is the committee charged with discussing that. We have to be prepared to tell someone that actually there isn't enough funding, or there is, we'll take money out of contingent funding and you should attend. But that is the dilemma. Katrina.
I do plan to, if it's okay with the committee, to take the money from local mileage to make up the 257.
Okay.
I didn't plan on going to contingent fund.
Yeah, sure. I think that makes sense. Other questions or thoughts on what everyone is spending? I've had a lot of talk about this year, I feel like. Okay, we have nothing to vote on that, so in a couple of weeks, we'll start a new year of what we can spend. All right, going through reports. I do not have a report. County Attorney, Holly, do you have anything for us?
Nothing really more than what I said at the meeting the other night, just that we're super busy right now with several different matters, litigation. To hopefully help that, I guess an update would be that the paralegal position that we've had open for a while now, we had that reclassified, and so we're working on the job description right now and hopefully getting that posted probably after the first of the year at this point. But that will help a lot to have somebody who's there to help Aaron with tons of FOIL requests and usual paralegal duties of typing pleadings and motions and whatnot for me. So hopefully we'll get some help soon.
Yeah, great, I hope so.
Thanks.
Questions for Holly? All right, thank you. Director of Finance, Lori.
Thank you. I don't have any updates at this time.
We're going to talk about sales tax and casino revenue at budget next week.
Correct, Monday.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for Lori?
Norma's on the screen.
Norma, hi. If you're there,
Hi.
Do you have any updates for us?
I am filling in for the rest of my team that had to leave early, so no, I have no other updates. Thank you.
Great, thanks for being here. Communications Director, Dominic, good morning.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Any
Just a few.
Yep, go
Sure.
ahead.
Yeah, just a few brief things. When it comes to the screens in legislature chambers, I know we've been talking about that a lot, and we anticipated the shift from the projectors to the other monitors. I can just let you know that we are waiting for the materials to be, they're on back order, the materials that make the systems connect. There's these little boxes. I'll spare you all the technical details, but everything else is moving forward great. You can see the screens are in there, and the one for the wall, the south-facing wall is here. We just aren't able to put it up till we get those additional materials. So facilities, the clerks, and other folks have been very good throughout that process. So we're hoping for that to happen in December, and I'm very frustrated with the back ordering. But that's that. And then a few other brief things. One is just that we are moving forward with our website transition, as was discussed and approved for the budget adjustment this year. So we've pulled together an internal steering group of employees from several different departments. And I'll keep this committee updated pretty much monthly throughout the next 12 months, I imagine, as that website shift changes. We'll be engaging with every department and user of our site as we go along, including a significant amount of interaction with the public so that we can learn about user preferences and really take a look at how we're best meeting the needs of our community with the site. And then the last thing I'll say is that I appreciate the legislature's passing of the resolution to advocate that New York State change its rules around the designation of newspaper, and we've been in contact with Anna Kellis and Leah Webb's office about how we look to support them in potentially drafting something moving forward. And so I just wanted to let you know that that is moving forward, and I'm working through it with them. That's all I have for updates today, unless there are any questions.
Great, thank you. Good updates. Questions for Dom? All right, well, thanks for all the work you're doing, and good luck with strategic planning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Any updates from committee members? Dan?
I just want to express my mild dismay at the lack of commitment to our color scheme. I mean, that initiative has just fallen apart as far as I'm concerned, and you're all on notice. Thank you.
Wait, are you taking the trophy back, or?
Let's just say it's a little threatened at this time, yes.
Susan has a question for you.
So this is for every meeting? Now that I know.
You know, actually, when we won the award, you said it wasn't required at every meeting.
Required's a funny word.
All right, well, let the minutes reflect that starting in January, we should strive wholeheartedly to reflect the Spirit Award that we earned earlier this year.
I object.
Does the committee want to change their cover sheet color?
Ooh.
Radical.
That's what I suggested.
Radical.
That's radical.
White. Orange is a very trendy color right now, just saying.
Okay, orange is trendy. All right, well, all right. You can ponder this for the next month, and come January. So this formation of the committee will meet again in January. We will have one more chance to discuss the color. If you remain on this committee for next year, you will have further input on this important topic. Did you want to comment, Rich? Mike, somebody over there had their hand up.
No.
Okay.
Something real?
Something real. Okay, any other real topics from committee members? Mike.
First, let me just say today is Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, and I think it's a good thing that maybe we should stop for just a second and remember that what's brought us into World War II with the deaths of a lot of people. The other thing I wanted to mention was the privilege of the floor today. This group came in and talked to us about the citizens audit and read a resolution into the minutes as though it was something we were doing. They read all of our names at the end. They got my name wrong, but I want to make sure that in our minutes that's only shown as something that that was done on privilege of the floor by members of the public. I also noticed that nothing was said. I mean, they're talking about the state database versus county databases for electors or people in the elections. Voters, that's the word I want. And that's a terribly difficult moving target. If we could have a magic wand and say, everyone has to stay where they live now. No one can go off to school. No babies can be born. Nobody can die. We could probably have a very good database with very few mistakes in it. But all of those things are constantly going on, and there's always going to be issues with that. And I think we've done a pretty good job at Tompkins County about purging the old voters' registrations when they are no longer living where they were, or someone's passed away, for example. So I do think that it's not an area that we are not conversant with. And I also think that there are a lot of issues with protecting our voting systems that aren't expressed by the folks that came and talked on privilege of the floor. including the actual efforts, criminal efforts to upend the elections in 2020 by our ex-president and his staff, and a lot of people that secretly conspired to form alternate presidential elector units. There's where the real issue of election integrity comes into play.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, I did just want to let you know that for public comment, things of that nature, especially with a lengthy resolution that they put together, all I put within the minutes is that these members, with their names, that they're volunteers of the New York Citizens Audit, read a resolution they put together citing information regarding election and voters.
That sounds very appropriate.
Yeah, and this meeting is recorded. Somebody could go back and listen to what they said. After they were here a couple months ago, the woman at that time did ask me if I wanted a resolution that we could, bring forward to the committee, and I said I didn't. I sort of spoke for the committee. I didn't, excuse me, I didn't ask you all, but the sense I got was that that would not be something that we would want to pursue. So that may be the resolution that they would have provided. I'm not sure. Rich?
Yeah, I'd just say that my district might be a little bit different than, or quite a bit different than your districts, in that there is a significant and substantial problem with the voter rolls in District 4 because of the high student population. Every 4 years, when there's a presidential election, you get a massive registrations. They sit there, and if you're running for office, you look like you have lots and lots of voters, and they don't live there anymore, they don't vote. And that's the bigger problem, is that you just don't get people to vote. It's not as if they're coming and voting fraudulently. They're not voting at all. When we recently saw that play out in this city ward where they had, I think, 100 people vote, fewer, in the whole ward. And yeah, it's a problem, but it's a very different problem. So.
Okay, Susan.
Excuse me. Apologies for coming late to the meeting. I was attending the annual meeting of Cornell Cooperative Extension, which was really fantastic. They had a speaker. Her name is Dr. Angela Odoms-Young, and she is the director of the Food and Nutrition Education and Communities Program and the New York State Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. And she gave an incredible presentation on moving from equity to community power, focusing on social and structural factors in our everyday work. It was really wonderful. So.
Was that, do you know if it was recorded?
I don't believe it was recorded, but I'll ask. It was fantastic, though.
Glad you got to attend that. All right. I believe there's nothing else we need to take care of, and we are 2 minutes over time, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.